Hello, request to all except panelists. Can you mute your mic, please? Thank you. Yes, good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Linstrom, I welcome you all. We would like to start this session. Venkat, over to you.
Thank you, Ajit. Okay, let's start this webinar. On behalf of Linstrom, I would like to welcome you all for this webinar. Every year, Linstrom celebrates Customer Experience Week with their customers, partners, and business associates. This year, since 5th October till today, we have number of digital events showcasing our knowledge, experience, and most importantly, the gratitude towards our customers. This is the last and exciting episode of our CX Week virtual journey. Linstrom is an industry forerunner and known for bringing new and sustainable technologies and processes in order to improve the hygiene, compliance, and safety levels for the users who are using our workwear and taking care of our own employees who are managing sales, operations, distribution of our workwear. Though we have robust system in place and our units comply with EN 14065, which is risk analysis of biocontamination control, which is normally called as RABC. Our units, all the units are complying with this RABC standards. But still, there were a lot of concerns from our users on infection control in current pandemic situation. In view of that, we engaged with DNVGL, who are our auditors also. Based on their recommendations and support, Linstrom successfully completed infection risk management and received MyCare badge. So this gives a lot of confidence to the customers that our operations complies the hygiene and we control the infection also. We thought it would be a good idea to share this experience with our customers, and hence this webinar is arranged. Thank you for your valuable time. I hope you will have enriching experience while listening to well-experienced and knowledgeable team from DNVGL experts, auditors, and we have infection control champion also. We also thank DNVGL panel for accepting our request to share their expertise and enrich all the attendees with their experience in this field. Let me introduce our key speakers also. Mr. Navnath Tendukar. He is a management professional with over 20 years of experience in various functions and also 10 years of experience in managing R&D, quality, production and supply chain. Then Dr. Dilip Andare, who is 40 years, so much experience. And he is a profession by doctor. He has completed his MBBS and MD. He started in a medical college and he had a small service or a short service in Indian Air Force also. And he has participated in several national and international conferences. So he has an excellent experience who will now help us by sharing his experiences with us. And then Suman Gosham, he also has 25 years of professional experience in various industries. And he is experienced in managing product services in public safety and skilled in ISO 14001 enterprise risk management. With this, I would like to invite our esteemed panel members to start the show. Over to you, Suman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Am I audible to all of you?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
If you don't mind, till the time Suman gets this back, shall we quickly go through the COVID meter as on this morning?
Yes, you can, doctor.
So as on today, the world total cases have crossed 3.67 crores. That is 36 million plus. and the deaths have already crossed the million mark. India has seen almost 69 lakh cases, 6.9 millions, and the deaths have also crossed 1 lakh in India. We have overtaken Brazil as number 2 in total number of cases. And number of deaths, of course, are still more in USA. But given the so-called reliability or unreliability of the mortality statistics, we don't really know. But currently we have about, officially, the death toll is 1 lakh plus in India. The good news is that in world over, the cases who have recovered out of this 3.67 36 million cases or 3.67 crore cases, 2.7 crores have recovered. So that is pretty impressive. In India, out of the 69 lakh cases which were recorded, 59 lakhs have recovered, which means we still have about 9 million active cases in the world, and also about 8 lakhs active cases, right? So the active cases continue to be a cause of concern, and looks like the curve is still going up. Hopefully, we may have reached the peak in this current wave, and the cases may go down in the near future. On the bright side, also we have this fact that the medical fraternity is now better equipped to deal with the cases of COVID. And compared to what we had in March or April, the doctors today know much more and much better than they were doing earlier. And the situation is certainly much better. Obviously, of course, there are still many unanswered questions, and every day we are learning something about this. But what strikes all of us most is that the infection control, which used to be more or less an area of concern for a limited occupational groups, particularly the healthcare settings, has now become a universal concern. That everyone who works, or everyone in all kinds of occupational settings or work settings or industrial settings, now have to deal with this facet of infection risk. And this may not be limited only to COVID. COVID is what we have today. But if you look at the emerging and re-emerging diseases in the last 20-30 years, most of them have come from animals, what technically are called as zoonotic diseases. And these are coming up as either newly emerging diseases, or some diseases which are re-emerging. Like, for example, you still see cases of plague. Till quite recent times, we used to believe that plague is now a part of history, but unfortunately, that is not so. We still are getting fresh cases. In fact, some of you may remember that in Surat, some years back, we had a epidemic or an outbreak of plague. So the crux of the matter is that there are many infections which are still around. There may be some in the just around the corner, waiting to pounce on human beings whenever the situation is favorable to the organism. So this has now become something of concern to everyone in all kinds of sectors, in all kinds of domains. And that's precisely the reason we have this webinar today. Navnath, you would like to respond?
Doctor, just wanted to see that your video is on so people can see you just for a minute, maybe when you're discussing. Suman is struggling with microphone settings, I believe. So we just request you to take this up forward.
So shall I also try to run the
Yeah.
presentation?
Yeah, it's the same thing which Suman is presenting now. If you want, I can present it from my side. Is that okay?
Yes. Maybe that, yeah, sure. Anytime Hassan back his voice, he can take over.
Yeah. So then let me just share it then.
Yeah, please.
Okay, 1 second. Here we go.
I will switch off my video now.
Yeah, that will be fine. So my slides are visible?
Yes, please. You can go into presentation mode.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am already in presentation mode.
So this presentation, ladies and gentlemen, is all about managing infection risks. This is not just about managing COVID, right? Navnath, could we have the next one, please? Yeah, this is a little bit about DNVGL. I guess either Navnath, you would like to speak about this?
Well, maybe in a very brief. So DNVGL, of course, I mean, we have just recently got tied up with Lindstrom. There may be a couple of customers who may be already knowing about DNVGL. So DNVGL basically is a foundation headquartered in Norway, Oslo. And it's 154 years old organization. We operate in maritime, oil and gas, renewable energy, softwares, and business assurance, where we are basically representing. That's a certification. 100 plus countries that we operate out, and 12,000 plus employees that are on board with DNVGL for various services. Yeah, so I think this is something which we can skip now. We can go to next slide.
Yeah, please.
Okay, this is once again about our purpose, our vision and values. I think that we can skip this at this point in time. We come to the main point where we are here to discuss about infection risk management holistic approach. Yes, Doctor, over to you.
Yes, sir. So this is an extremely interesting slide. It shows you a road which starts here today, and it goes back almost 2,000 years. And the figures that you see here and the size of these spheres, they correspond to the mortality which several pandemics in history have caused. So the biggest one which you see here happened sometime in 15th century. And it was a pandemic of bubonic plague, which killed almost half of the Europeans' population. Half of the Europe was wiped out. And they say it took almost 2 centuries for the population level to come back to the normal. So such was the devastating effect of these pandemics in the earlier times. And then there were, of course, several others like smallpox. If you compare the size of the sphere that COVID has, at the moment it is quite minuscule. At the moment it has just reached, has just crossed a million mark.
Hello.
So compared to, yeah.
Doctor, are you able to hear me?
Yes. So
Glad you're up.
I'm sorry. I'm extremely sorry. I was just struggling. Yeah, please carry on, Doctor.
No, it's okay. You can take over. So I was just trying to make the point that compared to the history of pandemics, different pandemics that we have seen in the last 2,000 years,
Yes.
currently COVID is quite small in numbers. But perhaps the concern is because it confronts the entire world, and the whole world is down to its knees.
I think, Doctor, sorry to interrupt you, there's a lot of echo. Probably
Yes, I can also hear the echo, but I don't know what is the reason.
because of Somnath's audio. It is. Okay, now the echo is gone since he has muted his audio. You can continue, Doctor.
Okay. So, Suman, will you like to take over from here?
Okay, Doctor. First of all, my apologies, extreme apologies. There's a little bit of technical glitch that I'm facing since morning, and I was trying my level best, but something has come up. So it's a makeshift attachment that I have made. So I'm sorry, my apologies for the initial problem. So I start with the intent was to, if you go back the first one, and if you see, we want to introduce you to managing infection risk. So it's not COVID-19, right? The discussion that we'll have henceforth for next 1.5 hours, it will not be centered around COVID-19, but COVID-19 is a part of this. Now, why we are talking about infection rather than managing COVID-19, we are talking about managing infection risk. So to set the context, we have to just go back maybe some 1,000 years before, or maybe 800 years before, when we see that how the mankind has faced this challenge of pandemic. Some were endemic and some were pandemic. And if you see, the biggest one was this bubonic plague, which killed something around 200 million. I don't know whether COVID-19 will cross that. I don't think so it will cross. And by that time, there are a lot of the positive news that we are getting now, that maybe by November or December or by early next year, we will have the vaccine and all. But then, yes, COVID-19 also have an impact on this, on the history of the pandemic. So if you see that, you will find that it's not the first time that we have come across this kind of scenario or of situations like this. If you go back 2016, it was Ebola. 2008, somewhat around that, Zika. Before that, SARS, MERS, all happened in this last 20 years, in this last 2 decades, right? And did we learn any lesson out of it? Probably yes, but to a large extent, I will say no. When we talk about lesson learning, I'm very specific onto the industry, the business. Did the business learn anything about it? I will say sometimes, to some extent, but not to a large extent. So this COVID-19 scenario, 2020 scenario, we are sure, and it has started happening, that the industry has started giving importance on infection. If you go and talk to industry about infection, well, the people who are in hospitals, healthcare, to some extent hospitality industry, like hotels or restaurants, they might be aware of infection. They're pretty strong on infection, but down the line, if you talk about, it's not so. And what we could see now, that industry is also coping up, industry is also learning, industry is having that enough knowledge now that how to handle infection. Right? The next slide. Now, if you see the pages of the history, last 100 years or maybe 200, 300 years, max to max, we had this kind of pandemic in form of plague, cholera, malaria, and it was primarily because of some kind of a war, right? Now, we had the doctors and the scientists like Dr. Ignaz, like Dr. Alexander Fleming, who had really done a miraculous job, right? A wonderful job. And they come out with a lot of, I will say, areas right? For example, say Dr. Ignaz. He was the first one who studied that what is the effect of hand washing, right? And reduced down some of the diseases which was related to pregnant women at that point of time. And we all know Dr. Alexander Fleming, right? Because of his antibiotic penicillin. And we thought that we have won the war, but it's not like that. Yeah, next slide, please. So we can run this particular video, and then you see it will give you a 2-minute presentation on the history of pandemic. Well, there is nothing. It's only the captions which are there. There is no music. There is no nothing here. So you will not be able to hear. Thank you, Navna. Thank you. Now, let us analyze last 100 years of this infections of this pandemic. And if we really go deep, we will find a lot of things which has come up. First of all, these are the diseases which are emerging or re-emerging, number one. Second, out of these diseases, 75% of the diseases are zoonotic. As Dr. Andhare was saying, that 75% of the diseases are zoonotic. Now why? What we mean by zoonotic is nothing but the diseases which has jumped from the animal world to the human world. Why? Because of primarily two reasons. One is obviously because of our consumption and overconsumption. What is that consumption? Consumption of the forest. We are going for deforestation. And as a result, what is happening, the forests are actually a barrier, are acting as a barrier between the human world and the animal world. Now, when we are cutting down this forest and going for a mass deforestation because of our greed or consumption, we didn't realize the fact that many of these diseases which are there in the animal world has jumped into the human world. And it's a testimony of the fact that 75% of the diseases which we had in last 100 years, right, has come from the animal world. The second one is because of our consumption once again, and this consumption is a real consumption of meat. The amount of meat, the different types of meat, right, that we consume, right, they are the source of, or rather one of the biggest source of this kind of zoonotic diseases. So it's because of the human activities and consumption, right, we are seeing these emerging and re-emerging diseases. And that's like the program objective. And that's the reason we are saying it's managing infection risk. Ladies and gentlemen, tomorrow or day after, or maybe a couple of months down the line, we may get the vaccine. But let me tell you, that's not the end of infection. Rather, I can say that's the start of infection. After a couple of years, you might get another zoonotic type diseases, which might be much more infectious, much more contagious, much more harmful than COVID-19. And in fact, last 1 week, there were two such news. In fact, I am based out of Pune, and there's a district called Palghar here, very close, right? That detected Congo fever, which is very, very contagious. And the mortality rate, if I am not mistaken, if I remember correctly, it was something around 30%. And then there are traces of bubonic plague somewhere in Northeast. So you will continue to hear this kind of news, which are definitely alarming, right? And it is because of the fact of our own activity and our own consumption, we are having this kind of problem. And the numbers which you could see, 100 billion, 9 trillion, right? These numbers are changing every day. These are all estimates. But these are the enormity of the impact of the word called infection. So that's the reason we say that instead of managing COVID-19, the human world needs to manage, need to learn, need to have the knowledge of how to manage infection. Yes, next one. Next slide, please. Navna? Perfect. Now let me come to the concept of this infection, how this infection gets transmitted and how it is relevant to our workplace. First of all, if we talk about the modes of transmission, it can be divided into two. Can be under two classified. So one is the direct one, wherein there is a person-to-person contact, and another there is an indirect one. That means a person to an object, and then it goes to another person. Now, when we talk about the direct contact could be through droplets and airborne transmission. That means either we sneeze, we cough, right? We spit, and then through this, the germs and the parasites, right, travel and reaches to or attack another person or another host. Now, there could be a common vehicle of transmission, right, wherein the germs and the parasites are there in a common vehicle like food or water. And we very often face this in industrial canteens. The germs get transmitted through those medium, or we call them as a vehicle. And the third one, obviously, are the biological type, wherein there are some vector. For example, it could be mosquitoes, it could be the mouse, the plague that we had, They are the vector-borne diseases and the transmission switch. Right? So, when we know that these are the type of transmissions of infection that can happen, what we have to do that in our system, we have to take care of this and see how we manage. For example, an elaborate one is on the next slide. So if you talk about the mode of transmission, you will find, first of all, it's an airborne disease. Examples are the measles, the influenza, the tuberculosis, the chickenpox, and herein you have COVID-19. Okay? So as I said, as the part of infection, COVID-19 will be there. But then the program is how we manage this entire infection. When we have a common vehicle of transmission, yes, which might be through water, food, borne diseases. Then we have the Legionella diseases. We have the hepatitis A, cholera, typhoid, amoebiasis, food poisoning. Vector-borne diseases like malaria, which comes from the insects and other vectors. Malaria, filaria, dengue, encephalitis. Then we have the diarrhea. Then we have the blood-borne diseases. The blood-borne diseases are hepatitis B, hepatitis C, the HIV, the Ebola, and obviously we have the sexually transmitted diseases, which could be HIV, syphilis, gonorrhea, right, and all. Now, this gives a very small snapshot of what kind of infection that the industry may face or the business might face, right, depending upon the type of activity they are in. So, if we only tackle COVID-19, probably we'll be missing a lot. What we have to tackle is overall infection, and these are the sources of infection. And each one of this, the control measures are different, right? And we have to know what are the controls that we need to have depending upon the type of transmission, right? Depending on how it spreads and all. That we are going to do little later. Yes, Navnath.
Suman, can you can start sharing your screen.
Okay.
It will be easier for you to.
Yeah, I understand, but then I do not want to disturb. Okay, let me share my screen. Yeah. Okay, let me share my screen. You can unshare. Are you all able to see my screen now?
Yes, sir.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. Thank you so very much. Now let me take you through a concept. And this concept is a well-known concept. And in fact, I will say the entire infection management is based on this particular concept, which is very simple, but it's very, very effective, which we call the chain of infection. And our job is to how we break this chain of infection. How we break this chain of infection. And each and every stages, our effort will be that what are the methods, what are the controls that we can use in industry. I am looking from business and industry. I'm not looking from what I will say, the hospitals or the healthcare. I'm looking from the business and from the industry perspective. And this is what we call it, the chain of infection. It's a chain. There is no starting point and the end point, right? But then to start the discussion, what we start with is the concept of infectious agent. It starts with infectious agent. And this infection agent could be the bacteria, the viruses, the fungi, the parasites, right? And how you break that. First of all, you go for a diagnosis and treatment. You need to know that what kind of ailment you have, what are the reasons behind that, whether it was a fungi, whether it is a virus or it's a bacteria, and based on that, you go for a treatment. Next, when you have these infection agents, where these infection agents lie in a reservoir. What is that reservoir? The reservoirs could be dirty surfaces, or the equipment, the people, animals, the insects, water, soil. Yes, they are the sources. Right? In industry, for example, you will find that, say, we do welding, and in welding we use the helmet. And initially, the industry used to control, until now the industry controls, well, how many numbers of helmets has been issued. Welding is not the concern. If there are 10 welders, so they will issue 10 helmets. Today I am using helmet number 1, tomorrow I may be using helmet number 7, so there is no control on the user. Only number control. 10 welders, 10 helmets. But now, this helmet could be a reservoir of some kind of disease, right? It can be the virus, it can be the bacteria, right? So herein now we have to have a control. So now, if I am using a helmet, I have to use that helmet for mine. I cannot use others' helmet. So how we break this concept? Herein becomes the cleaning, disinfection, sterilization. We talk about IPCC, infection prevention policies and the procedures, the pest controls, right? To remove this infectious agent from the surfaces and the equipment of the people or the animals. So, we have to follow this in our system. Now, if the system doesn't work, that means if you are not able to break this reservoir, what will happen? Well, from the reservoir, there will be a portal of exit. That means this infection agent will try to come out from an exit point. What are those exit points? Say if a reservoir is a human, the exit point could be an open wound, or there is a break in the skin, a splatter from the body fluid, aerosols when I sneeze and I cough. So these are the exit points. So human is a reservoir, there is an infection, the human is a reservoir, and when a human is doing some activities like sneezing or coughing, or if there is an open wound, those infectious agents will come up. So for that, what we have to do, what we need to have in the system, washing, sanitizing, PPE, control of aerosols and splatter, some kind of a respiratory etiquette while you cough or sneeze, and of course, the waste disposal. Now, post the COVID, you will find that in many companies where the biomedical waste rules was not applicable, post-COVID, biomedical waste rules will get applicable, because now that industry would be generating the used PPE. So waste disposal, how you dispose, how you sanitize, whether you can reuse it or you have to use and throw, how you throw, whether you will burn it. So there has to be a system on waste disposal. Now, of course, there is a portal of exit. So from the portal of exit, where that particular infectious agent will go, it will take a route. It will take a route. That means there will be a mode of transmission. And as we discussed, it can be a direct transmission, it can be an indirect transmission, it can be a airborne, it can be droplet, it could be waterborne, it could be vector-borne, anything. But there has to be a mode of transmission. And that can happen through a contact, ingestion, inhalation, right? For example, COVID-19, the mode of transmission is what we talk about, the droplet and the airborne primarily, and of course the touch. So what kind of systems that we need to have to break this chain? That means the mode of transmission, even if from the reservoir there is a portal of exit and there is a mode of transmission which is happening, how we can stop that? Well, PPE, sanitization, food safety, cleaning, disinfection, sterilization, and of course, isolation. So that means we are cutting the mode of transmission systematically. Now, if we fail, what happens? Then there is the portal of entry. That means that infectious agent coming out of the reservoir through a portal of exit and taking a transmission either through air or dust or droplet or vector-borne is now entering into one more reservoir through an entry, because again it has to enter into a reservoir. How it will enter? Definitely there is a portal of entry in that reservoir. What is that? What are those? Those could be a broken skin, respiratory tract, mucous membrane. If you go to the hospital, for the hospital scenario, it could be catheters, the tubes. For example, COVID-19 enters through our nostrils, through our mouth, and through our eyes, right? So these are the three inlets, or I will say portal of entry for COVID-19 as an example. And how we break the chain? We break the chain by obviously by washing, PPE, personal hygiene, first aid, and all. And when there is a portal of entry into a reservoir, it gives rise to a reservoir which we call susceptible host. The new reservoir we call a susceptible host. Well, they are usually a person, obviously, and to stop there, what we have to do? We have to go for an immunization. So that's the reason we are going for a vaccine development of the vaccine, because the COVID-19 scenario, most of the population are susceptible hosts, and to cut that particular thing, that not to generate much of susceptible hosts, we need to go for a immunization, treatment of the underlying diseases, and last but not the least, the education. This is the concept that how you manage and restrict the infection or any kind of infection. And this particular concept, you will find, you can Google it out, right? You can go to CDC website, you can go to WHO website, you will find the entire system, entire concept is built around breaking the chain of infection. So, DNV thought, when the pandemic started, specifically say from March on, what we that yes, now the lockdown has started, and definitely the lockdown one fine morning. When it is, I don't know, or rather, we were not aware of. We thought that maybe a month, but then we didn't realize it will take the 7th month. Maybe we don't know how many months are there now. But the industry has to open up. So, how we can help the industry? So, what we thought of that, let us come up with a concept called infection risk mitigation methodology, which will help the industry to learn, to acquire the knowledge, right, and implement the management of infection rather than COVID-19, which is part and parcel of it. Okay, Where from we have got this concept? The concept has come from a standard called managing infection risk, right? And this particular standard we use, it is a DNVGL standard we use as accrediting hospitals in the US. DNVGL is one of the two accredited, FDA accredited hospital accreditation or certification body, right, who accredits the hospital in US. And for that, we use a standard called managing infection. Now we use that standard. Of course, that particular standard level was extremely high because that was applicable for the hospital and the healthcare facility. So what we did, we took that hospital as a base and then toned down many of the requirements, removed many of the requirements to suit the requirement of the industry. Now why? Why it is? Because these four reasons. There is a health and safety crisis in the industry. Yes, there is. Does safety needs to rethink? Yes, it needs to rethink, right, and readapt itself to take care of. There is a supply chain crisis. Yes, huge supply chain crisis. There is a shortage. In fact, we have seen how the shortage has come up, right? There was a starvation in the store. Products were not available. Why? Because there is an impact on the supply chain, and as a result, obviously, there will be a cash flow. But out of these four, this trust crisis is extremely important. I will say this is the number one. Why? It's because of the fact now the customer will ask, is it safe? Can I consume? Can I use? Right? Can I stay? Right? COVID days, does it have the same? So now the customers are facing a trust crisis. So what the industries are doing right now, all the industries, all the businesses, what they're doing, very simple. They're in the process of assuring their customers that my product is safe, service is safe for consumption or utilization. So everybody is now in a reassurance business and reassuring their customers. And we expect going forward, right now also, we expect that there will be an extreme level of scrutiny from the customers, from the employees, and from the stakeholders. And for this particular reason, right, we came up with this concept of developing infection risk management protocol and the standard. And this is what I was talking about, that the healthcare industry, we have managing infection risk. And with that standard we have accredited around 3,500 healthcare. So what is the approach that we have taken? Methodology. That particular methodology consists of 6 major areas, I will say pillars, starting with the governance related to infection, the strategy related to infection, the communication related to infection, the actions related to infection, the analysis related to infection, and obviously, last but not the least, the improvement related to infection. Now, in these 6 elements, what we have accommodated? We have accommodated that infection risk management standard, which consists of the system behind infection risk management standard, starting with risk management, microbial surveillance, occupational health, emergency response and contingency planning, accident and incident, personnel and competency, human factors, security, PPE, hand hygiene, stakeholder care, cleaning, decontamination, disinfection and sterilization, facility environment, equipment and maintenance, and facility requirement and layout. All these are extremely important in light of infection. Well, Suman, we have a very strong occupational health process. I say, yes, I appreciate. Now you are opening, there was a discussion on similar to this that it was happening with one of the CEO of a company. They said, Suman, we are very good on occupational health. I said, fantastic, sir. Do you have a record? Do you have a record, the HR record, the employee record, that what is the percentage of the employees who have just crossed 55 or between 55 and 60? What are their health conditions? Whether they have any high blood pressure, or they may be a diabetes or any kind of health related diseases. Well, okay, what will be the importance of those information? Now, the importance of those information will be that when you will be opening up your premises, will you allow all the people? He said, no, we'll go in phases. I said, fantastic. Now, whom we will call? Then he said, well, we will call those who are needed at first, the maintenance people. I said, fantastic. Do you have any idea how many people who are above 55, right, in that particular maintenance job, will you allow them? Is it not a high risk? Then the answer was, yes, Suman, I understand where from you are really coming. So occupational health in light of infection has a completely different meaning or a connotation. Same thing, emergency. Well, industry handles a lot of emergencies. The fire, right, falling from height. Yes, emergency. But what we will do if there is a susceptible positive case identified when the work is in full flight? What we will do? Who will take care of them? Do you have the necessary infrastructures and the facilities to help them? You can't say no. And by the time the ambulance comes, I don't know, depending upon the location of the plant and the nearby COVID-approved hospital, right? What you will do? In fact, we were discussing with one industry where from the nearest hospital is 3.5 hours. So at minimum, their infrastructure must suit at least 4 hours of keeping that particular susceptible positive case isolated, right, and not allow the disease to spread. So when we look from all these areas, for example, human factors, which we call it the behavioral safety, and what you have seen, 90% of the systems that we talked about to break the chain of infection are all human factors. That means to be practiced by an individual. Hand washing, sanitizing, mask, isolation, all these are part of an individual effort. So human factors play an extremely important role. Equipment and maintenance, say your HVAC system, if you are in an office. Now you have an HVAC system, and usually the number of, usually it is 6, that is number of circulations which are happening, and usually there is a mix of outside air and the circulated air. Now do you have the HEPA filters? Whether you will maintain the 6 times the circulation or you will increase to 12 times. Now these are the impact, these are the scenarios which may come up when we start looking from the infection point of view. So it's relaunching the business. So what we thought that in order to launch your business in the post-COVID-19 era, there must be a system in place related to your health and safety. There must be a system to re-engage your employees and the customer, generate that trust. Of course, move fast. The benefits, first of all, you will be able to get that in order to manage infection. Now, not the COVID-19 infection, because infection, yes, it will stay with us, right, for next 100 years or even more than that. So how we manage when the pandemic or the endemic comes? How we can leverage your COVID-19 response to adapt to your business? Obviously, well, we don't know and we don't expect that this kind of lockdown to happen, but it may happen. So learning the lessons out of this and knowing that what kind of infection it is and how it can be managed, next time I will be equipped enough to really drive the changes in the HSE. And of course, the last one, reassure the public, the customers and the employees that your premises, your products, your services are safe for consumption. So now this particular infection risk maturity model fundamentals, it has five level 1 to level 5.
Suman,
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt you. We are running out of the timer.
Yeah, I'm closing up. Level 1 to level 5, wherein up to level 2, we expect that the basic fundamental things has to be in place related to managing the infection. At level 3, 4, we are looking for a lot of best practices. And level 5, we are talking about innovation. There are a lot of innovations are now going on in the industry, right, to manage these infections. For example, if you go to a hotel, it will be no touch. That means when you enter a hotel and then you check in and check out, you don't touch. So this is how the hotels are redesigning their infrastructure. And post that assessment, the assessment will be of two types. One will be wherein in readiness assessment, we look into whether the organization is ready to manage infection, just ready to manage infection. That means all the basic fundamentals and the basic requirements are complied. And if you comply, which is the maturity level, wherein we look into best practices and innovation. And that assessment, what will be the deliverables? The deliverables will be definitely a report, which will indicate that yes, you are very good in this, but you need to improve on this. Next deliverable will be an assessment statement that yes, you are at a maturity level 3, 4, 5. And last but not the least, there will be a digital trust mark, which will be given. Now, why this digital trust mark? The digital trust fact that, as we said, that every industry is in a reassurance business. And reassurance means you have to reassure your customer. That means you have to communicate back to your customer that your premises, your products, your services are safe. How you do that? For that, we have come up with a QR code, which will help you to reassure. We will show it to you. Now, what modifications we have done going further? Then we realized that, okay, not only these 6 elements will also help, but then specific industry has a specific need, specific requirement. For example, if you go to food and beverages, if you go to retail, if you go to education, if you go to a hospitality, if you go to an office, the activities are different, the requirements are different, the infection types are different. How you handle it? So what we have done, we have added on the sector-specific requirement, and which has helped to mature that MyCare assessment model to a large extent. And these are some of the brands who have started using that concept across the globe. For example, in retail, Carrefour, in terms of industry, ArcelorMittal, in terms of shipping, that means cruise liners, we have Viking Line. In food, we have Renova, Ascender. We have ITC hotels from the hospitality who are using this concept, right, to manage their infection. Okay, and this is the trust mark that we are talking about. QR code, and if you scan the QR code, the customer, and this scanning can be done with any normal Android phone, normal phone, and the customer will be able to know what are the activities, what are the initiatives, right, that particular organization has done to make their premises or the product or the service safe consumption. So now the next step is that you will find the NVGL at your side. And now how the NVGL can help, the concept behind it, I leave it to my colleague Navnath. Navnath, we can start the discussion. If questions, we can answer it. Yes, Navnath.
You have to mute your mic.
Yes.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. So thank you, Suman. Thanks for giving insight perspective on infection risk management, where you also discussed about various facets. While listening to what you were saying, I could manage to jot down a couple of questions, which the participants will be happy to know about. I'm sure about it. There are two questions which has been posted by participant. We'll take it up later. Let me just ask you this question to you, Suman. To what extent do you feel that health and safety management system needs an revival to incorporate infection related risks?
Yes, that's what I will say, a fantastic one. Well, when we look from the health and safety part, and very specifically on the health part, on the safety part, we look into, in our businesses, we have seen that how they do the risk management of safety. And therein we have seen the safety has been addressed, the occupational health has been addressed, but in infection, no. Infection has not been addressed. So to start with, the business now need to know what is infection, need to know the risk behind that infection, they need to assess that infection, see the criticality of it, and seriously try to build in controls in around that. And our model will help to decide those controls, or at least will give a direction that where those controls need to be built around. It has to be in the human factors, or in the occupational health, or in HR. Now, I feel HR will play a very, very important role in this. Yeah.
Thanks, Suman. So specific, you have to mute your mic. So I think there's some problem when two people are, I don't know, the echo is coming in. I'm sorry about this. So the specific question here was, Suman, with respect to, what kind of documents or maybe the processes, procedures that industry is using. There are many participants who are coming in from industry. Just to spread a little bit of a light, not more than a 1 minute, what kind of documents that you see that those will play an important role in terms of ensuring that the infection related risks are also captured in the day-to-day, the process approach, when possibly process related risks are already identified, but then infection related risks, to identify them, what kind of documents or possibly procedures that they need to relook into?
Yeah, so that's the reason I just came back to this particular slide. Now this slide talks about everything, how we manage infection and what kind of systems that we need to have in an organization. And it starts with a risk management part here, how we identify the risk, right, and how we assess them. Then we need to go for microbial surveillance. It can be an environmental surveillance, right? For example, in a particular area or in a particular shop or in a particular room, right? What is that level? How you determine it and how you monitor it. So that kind of system needs to be there. In occupational health, you have data related to your employees. But then do you have data related to what kind of I will say diseases or what kind of health issues that they have? Now, when we have a knowledge of those health issues, then we can determine that, well, whom to invite first, start a business, whom to invite, who are the one we will we will first invite, who are the ones we will not be able to at this moment, right? Depending upon this kind of health data that we would be having. So all these data need to get turned out. Then, as I said, the emergency response has to be, I will say, not redrawn, but a next page has to get added. That page will talk about the scenario related to what kind of emergency that we might have related to infection. And the most prominent among them is if you identify a positive case. Now, Suman, why you are talking about positive case always? This reason for India specific, we have not yet reached the peak of infection. We don't know. We have not yet reached the peak, and we don't know when we will reach the peak. Yes, the numbers are coming down, right? The R0 numbers are coming down. The mortality rates are coming down. A lot of improvement. But have we reached the peak? I don't know. Now, when there is a doubt, when we don't know whether we have reached the peak or we are in a declining phase, then in that case, there is a high probability that when the industry opens up, there will be some kind of, we may encounter some positive cases. And it has happened in the past. In last 1 month, well, in and around Aurangabad, in Pune, many of the industries have closed down because the positive cases were detected in numbers, 10, 15. So, emergency response has to be relooked. Accident incident has to be relooked. Now, what is accident here? For example, if I don't comply with a hand washing or sanitization or masking procedure, or how we handle the waste, biomedical waste that gets generated, well, that's an accident. That may lead to an accident. Personal competency matters a lot. Human factors, as I said, the entire program is on human factors, the behavior. So all these things will undergo a change. An addition, 1-page addition will happen to the existing HSE management system or the process.
Thanks, Suman. Next question, just mute your mic. Next question goes to Dr. Andare. Being walked into this industry for about 40 years, having a very good understanding and knowledge on all those factors, being a doctor, I have a question. Being a doctor, to what extent do you feel that occupational health centers of an industry, of an organization, need an upgrade in terms of keeping the infections at a bay?
Yeah, thanks, Azad, for asking that. The OSCs are generally quite prepared and geared up to deal with the infection risks at that center. But now we are confronted with a risk outside the OSC in the industry overall. So the OSC has to be prepared in the sense which Suman just now said, that they have to know their clientele, their comorbidities, and by comorbidities we mean the vulnerable population, which is the older age group, those who have uncontrolled diabetes or uncontrolled hypertension, or those who are likely to be immunocompromised. So the OSC doctors have to be now more aware of the risk which this population faces, and also should be well equipped to deal with any emergencies, specifically infection related. And in terms of COVID, it could be having the pulse oximeters, having oxygen supply. And nowadays there are enough gadgets available where even if oxygen cylinders are not there, you can use the gadgets to generate oxygen from air, and these are called as the oxygen generators. So such things are becoming more and more important. Plus, they have to have a good liaison and sort of tie up with hospitals which can deal with emergencies, which can have beds in case they are required, and also adequate stock of medicines which will be needed. So
thank you, Doctor. Yes, thank you, Doctor. There's a follow-up question on the same situation, but this is related to health management program. What will be the significance of occupational health management program considering infection risks?
Come again? And could you repeat
With
your
respect to
question?
health management program, yeah, I'm coming back. What will be the significance of occupational health management programs considering infection risks? Suman has already given a small example with respect to the age factor, but overall health management program where organization has got their regular health checkups and kind of a thing. So what will be the significance of this infection risk in their regular health management programs of any of the industry?
Yeah. So see, the occupational health program, as far as the medical checks are concerned, they revolve around two main things. One is a pre-employment examination that we conduct. And the second is the periodic checkups that we do, and also dealing with day-to-day problems that person or the employee may be having. So for all the three, now the OSC has to be aware of this risk. And although, of course, no one is suggesting that we should have a COVID test as a pre-employment checkup, but the comorbidity certainly, if a person has, would put that person in a higher bracket of risks. From that point of view, your pre-employment examination will be important. Secondly, we have to also be aware of the movements, where the person is coming from, particularly if the person is coming from hotspots or containment zones, or an employee has traveled from an area which is a hotspot. Naturally, the OSC has to be more worried about that. In the day-to-day monitoring also, the OSC can play a big role in screening of suspects, in keeping them in isolation with the required precautions and with the required first aid measures, and then quickly providing the necessary secondary level of treatment.
Thank you, Doctor. So then the message would be out to all the participants that we organizations need to have a robust health management program considering all the aspects, right from pre-employment to the the regular working hours. Okay, now Suman, there's a question now to you related to the risk management policy.
Yeah.
So you can just mute it till the time I finish my question. Yeah. So everyone out there, I'm sure everyone is aware about it. When we talk about EHS or health and safety, there is a risk management policy which is always available. Now, in terms of infection risk, to what extent organization need to dwell inside to come up with a strategy with respect to identifying all infection related risk in the risk management policy? To get my question?
Yes. Now,
Okay.
to answer to that, let me go back. Thank you. First of all, thank you for that particular question. Let me go back to my first slide. And to answer to that question, the concept starts from here. What we mean by infection, it could be like this. So, first of all, we need to look into the activities, all our surroundings, our processes, that whether we are exposed to this kind of diseases. We may not, right? At least when we look from the infection point, right? So if we are exposed to this, or if there is any symptoms, or if there is anything which comes up like this, how we manage? Well, industry has been managing it little. For example, in the canteen, we could see we have seen good and matured food safety processes, which is that is also handling the infection from the food safety perspective. But then, for example, if that industry is near to some kind of a forest, or a lot of trees are there, which is usually, then there could be a lot of vector-borne diseases which might come up. right? Like, and may lead to malaria, filaria, and all. And we need to really think from that infection point of view. Yeah, okay, this is our location, and this is what could lead to, right? So, first of all, we need to look into that thing entirety, that what are the activities, what are the processes, where we are located, right? Where from our people are coming? Majority of our people are coming. What is the composition of our workforce? Is it permanent? Permanent in the sense, same people are coming. I'm not talking from the permanent in terms of employment, but whether the same number of people are coming or daily there are changes in the contractor's workforce or frequent changes in the contractor workforce. Okay. What about the transportation, the logistics? Now, when we look into all our activities, each one of these activities might throw up a challenge related to the type and nature of infection. So, obviously, that will be a starting point of doing this infection. So, obviously, to start with on risk management is the risk identification that comes up. So, these are one of the areas wherein we have just highlighted. It's not all. It's not the exhaustive one. Some indications are there. Now we have to look from this light and then identify the risk and then take sufficient controls in place. Now, there is an interesting fact. What is that interesting fact? The interesting fact is, in HSC, we use the concept of hierarchy of controls. And what is that hierarchy of controls? That means first is elimination. If you are not able to eliminate, then you substitute. If you are not able to do that, then start thinking on engineering controls. Then followed by that are the administrative controls. And last, of course, the PPE and the signage. So this hierarchy of controls usually we follow when we adopt the HSE practice. But in case of infection management, there is a slight difference. What is that difference? In infection management, we cannot, the industry I'm talking about, industry doesn't have any role or cannot eliminate or substitute this hazard. Why? Because industry will not develop a vaccine. Industry cannot do anything, cannot come with a medicine. No, it is not possible. So from the industry point of view, the first two hierarchy of controls, that means elimination and substitution, is not applicable. So where from they start? They start with engineering controls. What are those engineering controls? Isolation, right? Having the necessary infrastructure. When we isolate in a room wherein we have the oxygen, we have the necessary infrastructure to handle it. So these are some of the engineering controls. Well, we know, all of us know what are the PPE controls. And last but not the least is obviously the signages and all. So when it comes to infection management, our hierarchy of controls starts from engineering controls, PPE controls, and of course the administration controls. Obviously, I missed out. I'm sorry. The engineering controls, the admin controls, and the PPE controls that we have. The admin controls includes the medical controls. For example, if the industry wants to start up and the risk management is done, I will say, okay, we will first of all let us look into the health statistics of my employees, and then pick and choose. Okay, we will allow this type of people, and we will not allow this kind of. So that's where the risk management starts. I hope I am able to answer to that question.
Thanks, Suman. Thank you very much. So it was more of an clarified way, and rather you have answered a couple of other small questions as well. Okay, so I have a question now coming in from one of the participants. This is related to I think he belongs to a petrochemical industry. So the question here is, what is the best method to assess cumulative risks in petrochemical industries? Suman, can you spread little light on this?
Yes. Infection is not that dependent upon petrol. or other. Infection, as I said, for example, say, if we talk about the gamut of this infection, the airborne and the common vehicle and all, it is not on the industry perspective. It's on geography, the location, the type and nature of the people who are inducted, what kind of disease might come up. Now, I don't think so, when we handle oil and petrochemicals, okay, when we handle the input chemicals there, the industry which are exposed to that risk, that goes very specifically to the occupational health part. That means if I use a chemical, how it will impact my body, that's the part of pure occupational health. That doesn't come under infection. For example, if I'm using benzene, I know that it might impact my generation of RBC. That means the target organ here is my spine, where from the RBCs are generated, and that might lead to some kind of a leukemia. I'm not talking about that. But where we are talking about in terms of infection is, it's coming up, for example, if that area is surrounded by a lot of forest, obviously, then a lot of vector-borne diseases will come. Isn't it? So this is how we need to look at it, not from an industry, but then as a basic. In totality, we have to look into. Yes, Namma.
Thank you, Suman. The another question is now related to generally identified hazards and relevant risk controls or the risk identification. If we consider a contraction of pathogen as one of the hazards through any of the exposed surfaces in the organization, what kind of risk controls will be needed? Maybe briefly 1, 2, 3 bullet points, Suman.
Okay. Very short and crisp answer. Related to the surface, and I'm talking about now here very specific COVID-19, but definitely if you Google, you will find a whole lot of. WHO has come up with a guideline. CDC has come up with a lot of guidelines. That if what kind of surfaces are there, if it is a wooden surface, if it is a highly glossy surface, if it is a steel, and they have come out with some kind of a research. Of course, let me also accept the fact, as far as COVID-19 is concerned, right, it's still a lot of discoveries has to happen, right? We really don't know about that viruses as of now. We know very little. A lot of research are also going on, right? Nowadays, I could see that, well, 6 feet is not good enough for social distancing. The virus may travel further to that, even 9 to 12 feet. So these changes are happening. And the best source of information, I will request all of you that please visit the WHO website, the CDC website, you will get an updated information. And they are coming up a whole lot of guidelines on what could be the controls behind that. In fact, there are different types of disinfectants that we use. For example, if you go to a hotel, that how you handle the vegetables, how you handle the grocery, what kind of chemicals you use. So there are guidelines coming up. So there are guidelines of how you decontaminate the surface, how you do the sterilization. So all these things, I will say in short, you will get in WHO and CDC website. And those will be the controls.
Thank you, Suman. So I think, what I can make out of all these discussions and the answers to all the questions is that these infections are not restricted or relevant to any of the industry, the size of industry or an organization that we work. It is related to possibly geographies, the type of people, the carriers, and possibly, the infection mechanisms that any of the organization is having. So I have the last question now. Of course, looking at the participation from various industries, it will be a bit difficult, but then still let me just ask this question to Dr. Andare. What kind of a right PPEs? Maybe you can mention some of the occupations and possibly the right PPEs for people while they're working. in this particular scenario. Dr. Andhare?
Yeah, Namath. In fact, the most effective way of dealing with this infection risk is the behavioral. You sometime back you also asked me about the role of health management, and I think in that health management, the influence on the behavior of people is also extremely important. We have seen examples of incorrect behaviors which have led to disastrous big outbreaks which have happened, and what are classically described as super spreading events have happened, and in different settings. So behavior is certainly one thing that we need to emphasize and sort of reinforce at each possible level. The main PPs, the main three routes of entry, as Suman has very clearly said, are the eyes, the nose, and the mouth. So we need to have this covered properly. People will generally, when we talk about mask, would ask me if everyone needs to wear N95. Well, the answer is no. Everyone doesn't have to wear N95. N95 will be required in certain specific settings, for example, like healthcare. So if I have to see a patient, I better wear a N95 mask. But in general settings, what is more important is that you maintain a physical distance. And by the way, nowadays, most of the concerned people use the term physical distancing rather than social distancing, because in the distancing, there is nothing antisocial. In fact, you are being social when you follow that distancing. So maintaining the distance, using where possible or where required, correct PPs. So first, as far as possible, avoid crowds, because in one of the infectious disease specialists who is a part of our ICC control training, he says this very clearly, that this virus loves crowds. Okay, so long as you stay away from the crowds, you maintain a safe distance, then the risk becomes minimal. The second thing which Suman also now pointed out is that the main route of transmission is through droplet. So droplet is as the particles come out when the person sneezes, coughs, or even talks. Those are the main routes of transmission. Aerosol is also a possibility, but that is a smaller percentage. So if you maintain the distance, if you cover the main portal of entry, depending on the risk in the area in which you are working, I think that should be enough. And obviously, what Dr. Ignaz Semmelweis taught us 200 years, almost more than 150 years ago, hand washing. So hand washing, distancing, and masks. These are the three main weapons currently available to us, because very effective medicines and a very effective vaccine are still a little far away at the moment.
Thank you, Doctor. So, thank you, Suman, for giving us an insightful
Thank you.
information about overall risk management, a holistic approach. And also thank you for answering a couple of questions which were possibly are important at this point in time, in the current unprecedented time for industries to understand and to follow certain practices. Thank you, Doctor, for again responding to some questions and initiating at the beginning. We apologize because there were some technical issues with Suman's machine and he was not able to connect to a microphone. So we had possibly lost a couple of minutes at the beginning. So thank you very much for patiently and peacefully listening out to it. Venkat, over to you.
Thank you, Navnath and Doctor and Suman. I would like to thank all the participants who patiently listened to the complete webinar. I hope that we got some good knowledge and we will be part in controlling the infection spread, and we will help the society also. Thanks, Ajit, and thanks everyone. This way we can complete this webinar.
Thank you, Vaibhav.
Thank you all of you.
Thank you, Venkat, and thank you, DNL. Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.